Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this afternoon's news conference. My name's Constable Danny McKinnon with the Winnipeg Police Service. I'm a public information officer. Before we get into our first release, I'd like to read our land acknowledgement and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, home and traditional lands of Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Innu, Cree, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. Today with us is Inspector Jen McKinnon from the Major Crimes Division, as well as Inspector Max Waddell from the West District, and they will be providing some information after I read it regarding a recent armed robbery in the Unicity retail community. And as well, we'll take questions, but before then, we'll find out how WPS is continuing to combat the citywide retail theft crime issue. Four teens were arrested for armed robbery at a Unicity retailer yesterday around 5:15 p.m. As part of a Winnipeg Police Service strategy to combat violent retail theft, officers from the West District were proactively monitoring a Unicity retail hub within the 3600 block of Portage Avenue. At that time, while they were parked in the area, they were flagged down about an armed robbery with a gun that was in progress in a store nearby. The officers rushed into the store in the 3600 block of Portage and apprehended two suspects, including one still armed with a gun. Nobody was injured, and two other suspects were arrested outside the store a short distance away. All of the youths were turned over to the Major Crimes Unit for continuous investigation. After speaking to witnesses, and with the assistance of video surveillance, investigators determined that four teens had entered the store, grabbed backpacks off of shelves, filled them up with merchandise, and then attempted to leave without paying. Store security that was already on site attempted to stop the theft and grabbed hold of one of the suspects. At that point, one of the other suspects pulled out a firearm, pointed it at the security person, and demanded that they let go of the first suspect. It then transitioned into the armed suspect pointing the gun at the security personnel and firing at him, almost hitting his face. Thankfully, the gun was determined to be a CO2-propelled cartridge air gun, and the following charges have now been laid. So a 13-year-old male was charged with armed robbery with a firearm, use of an imitation firearm during the commission of an offense, assault with a weapon, possession of a weapon, a 13-year-old female, armed robbery as well, a 15-year-old female, again, armed robbery, as well as 5 warrants, and a 17-year-old male was charged with armed robbery, failed to comply with sentence order, and a warrant for failing to comply with his sentence order. And all four were detained in youth custody. Now, before we move into questions, because I know there's questions, PIO office did receive quite a bit of media attention on this today. Inspector McKinnon, she's going to come up and just discuss a little bit more about the citywide strategy that's been taking place.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Inspector McKinnon of our Major Crimes Division. Honestly, sorry, take a breath. I don't have anything prepared for you this afternoon. I'm honestly at loss for words. This morning I had an opportunity to view this video and I was shocked. I'm a 28-year member of this service and I have no words to describe how terribly wrong this incident could have gone on for everyone, for the security officers, for the youths that are involved, for our officers that were coming through the door, and for our community that's out shopping on a Tuesday evening at 5 p.m. How did we get to this place? Retail crime used to be about shoplifting. Shoplifting, meaning hiding something in your jacket, in your bag, and going out of this store unnoticed. The goal was not to get caught. People didn't get hurt. Kids didn't come to the store with firearms. But this is what the staff and security are having to deal with every day. Wondering every day if this is going to happen. 3 years ago, when I became the commander of the Major Crimes Unit and started getting involved in the retail theft initiative, it was for this very reason. This work has grown from a small property crime unit to a service-wide approach. It's collaboration with our property crime unit, our major crimes unit, Inspector Waddell's community support unit, who are the members that were in the parking lot yesterday. Our community support units across the city, our community relations unit who connect with the business owners, Crime Stoppers, our retail partners who 3 years ago met us at the table and said, let's work together and do something about this. The Retail Council of Canada and Manitoba prosecutions who are like, we want to work with you. It's grown so much that last year, our provincial government supported us with funding with the Violent Crime Retail Theft Initiative. And I think with that funding ending at the end of last year, there's a sense that this work stopped. But I'm here today to tell you that this work has never stopped. This is an incident that is terrible, but it also shows that it's the proactive response of our community support unit being in that parking lot at that moment that this didn't turn into something much more tragic. We can't be everywhere, but what I can tell you is, working with the Retail Council of Canada, there is a national blitz that's happening across law enforcement agencies. This isn't just unique to Winnipeg. This is a national problem that we're all facing and we're all trying to find a solution to. So for the month of September, the Property Crime Unit, along with the community support units, our Community Relation Division, Crime Stoppers, all the people who came to the table with us in the past, we're back there. We are out there. We will never stop. We are going to be putting resources to this very issue through the month of September, with more to come. We have the Christmas season coming up. This work is ongoing, and it's a commitment from the Winnipeg Police Service to continue moving forward and working with our retail community. I'm going to invite Inspector Max Waddell to come up to the podium with me, but I think we're ready to take questions.
You're emotional. Can you explain why? And maybe it seems like an easy question.
Well, I think it's nerves. I'm not comfortable being in front of the camera. That's not the role I signed up for. Inspector Waddell is fantastic in front of the camera. It comes across as emotion. Some of it's nerves, but I think it's just, it's the commitment. I think about the retailers. I think about the people who are in that store. I think about your kids that are getting their first job in the retail. At my first job, I worked in a shoe store, you know, and I never had to worry about somebody coming in with a firearm, even if it's a CO2 gun. I never had to worry about that. So how do I assure the public that we're out there and that we're doing something? How do I get across the commitment? And I think I take that very, very personally. And so probably the emotion that you're seeing in my voice right now. I'm sure we have another question about why we're not emotional.
I mean, the ages obviously stick out. There are two 13-year-olds. I assume one of the 13-year-olds was the one pointing and firing the gun. What does that say about how these thefts, I mean, it's anybody these days, it seems.
You know, unfortunately, We are seeing a number of youth that are perhaps a little misguided or a little bit lost, and this is just yet another example in our communities. You know, with shoplifting and retail theft, it has just become so overwhelming for so many of us, as Inspector McKinnon just said, and the level of violence that we're seeing is just continuing to increase. And this could have ended in a much different outcome than it did. You have to put yourself in the position of those officers that responded that day, that when we go to these calls, whether it's a replica firearm, whether it's a CO2 firearm, whether it's a real firearm, we're treating it as a real firearm. And we could have been in a position where we had to use lethal force to deal with it. Not only with the suspect, but all the bystanders that were in that premise. And it was just a very, very unneeded, dangerous situation. And I want to be clear about something else too. The majority of retail theft and shoplifting is not through need. This is organized crime that is happening. It would not surprise me that these youth were directed to complete these acts of theft to later be sold to create monetary value. That's truly what's going on here, and the public needs to understand that. I feel at times there's this misnomer out here that people are starving and they need this for survival. That is not the case. I can't say that for every situation, but the majority is not for survival.
What can be done about the organized? I mean, we've talked about that a lot. I mean, I know the Retail Council of Canada, the Retail Crime Task Force, and they're all looking at these sorts of things in terms of, you know, what can be done. But, I mean, you immediately look at this, you're like, okay, well, these kids are just going to get lesser sentences than maybe an adult would in this situation. Is that often why you're seeing, you know, younger kids being...
Well, and I think we have to look at these. They're serious charges. Like, this isn't shoplifting, this is robbery, right? And firearms charges. You know, I sit on an executive task force that's made up of government representation, justice, community, retail council. But Max has a long history with investigations through his work with the organized crime unit. I have a long history with investigations, and prior to me being an inspector, worked in our major crimes unit. And as the commander now of that major crimes unit and our property crime unit, we're paying a lot of focus on the criminality of the organized part. Organized can mean different things to different people. In Max's world, that can be your gangs, your drug dealers, you know, and I'm not saying that there isn't a piece of that or could be a piece of that, but organized could be simply also, to Max's point, is that people are being directed to go in and steal because, you know, they are youth. And, you know, take the firearms charges out of this, if it was just a shoplifting that got caught, youths are going to be handled a little bit differently than, say, an adult would. The property crime unit, we do these initiatives. We're doing it this September, working with the community support units. But the majority of our work is focused on the actual investigations in regards to why is this being stolen, what's happening with this property, how is it being fenced, and who's receiving it? Because it's the people that are receiving this property that drive the market for this. Last year, we had an investigation that I had come forward about in regards to a gentleman who had a storage facility with $500,000 in stolen property. And you could trade stolen goods for drugs for a quick fix, right? So it's a real gamut of what this covers, and it's focusing on the people who are taking in this stolen property, because that's driving the market for people to do this.
Can you speak to what was stolen?
No, I'm sorry, that's forming part of the investigation. And quite frankly, I was so focused on the video and what both Inspector Waddell and I watched this morning that I haven't dug in with the investigators to what exactly was stolen.
Could you maybe say what some kinds of things that are typically stolen that are fenced?
Well, I mean, this is Walmart. I know with some of the other stores, we're looking at tools. We look at meat. Meat is a huge for our grocery stores is a huge commodity that's being stolen and then it's being offloaded. Obviously, we have somebody who's taking that in, and we have investigations focusing on that. We just did an arrest recently that we'll be working with PIOs to get out, where it was $6,700 worth of meat being stolen from grocery stores, right? So a lot of work in these areas, but in this case, it's Walmart. They had a backpack, so, items that can fit into a backpack, right? So is it worth it, having a firearm to bring to something like this? Absolutely not.
Was it a member of the community that flagged down the security or?
Yeah, no, it was a bystander, yeah.
And can you just talk me through what resources are being put into protecting retailers and what more can be added to add that additional level of support?
Well, and I think this is a combined effort, sorry. Inspector Waddell. Inspector Waddell puts a lot of resources. He's very sensitive to the needs of the community and what's happening in his West District. So I'll let him speak to his community support officers and what they're doing, their proactive work. But I know with our enforcement that's going to be happening in September, the property crime unit is going to be doing a covert enforcement. So it's difficult because we're not able to stretch our resources and be everywhere all the time. So it's a very strategic deployment of resources in regards to what area we're going to be, whether it's a visible presence or a covert presence. Sometimes that drives criminality to another area of the city. So it's deploying resources effectively so that we can cover off if we're at one location and people hear about it and moving somewhere else, that we have a different type of response to that area. So that's the proactive work. But Max, these were your folks, so I'll let you speak to what you're doing.
So each division is afforded a group of officers that fall under the umbrella of the community support unit, and they're like our problem solvers. So when we receive intelligence that there are increased levels of theft in particular areas, we will deploy accordingly based on times, dates, nature of the thefts, and severity. So that's what was going on in this case. We've noticed an uptick in the Unicity portion of the city, and therefore we took action, and we've spent a considerable amount of time out there trying to deter and actually apprehend some of these individuals. And this is a perfect example of us taking that initiative, being there in time to prevent who knows what could have happened on a move forward basis. And I just want to answer your question a little further about you're saying what can be done about this. The reality is clearly the consequences that offenders are getting for their actions is not sufficient enough to stop them from reoffending. That's the answer to your question. And until society determines and deems there needs to be more consequences, this is going to continue to happen. And that's the unfortunate reality of what we are dealing with as police right now.
And is there anything else that you could be doing in terms of resources other than the units and the rest?
Yeah, well, when you say resources, we don't have infinite number of officers, right? And we're also expected to go to 911 calls and deal with every other community problem, whether it's protests, et cetera. So as these incidents occur, we're very much intelligence-driven. You have to remember that. We will deploy accordingly to defend what we need to, whether it's people's property, their safety, et cetera. And whatever available resources we have, we try and put on these types of situations.
I know if you looked at your stats earlier, when you guys came out earlier this year, one of the things that has helped retail businesses is the reporting side, doing more reports. I imagine that gives you guys data, and you kind of, well, you called it intelligence, maybe where to be and that sort of thing. How imperative is it for businesses to report these things? And
Yeah.
I know a lot of businesses say, well, it's just a waste of time for us because it takes time. They're trying to deal with the theft or the robbery or whatever, and now they got to make a report, and they don't feel like anything's going to happen. But the numbers that came out, I mean, at least there's been more reporting, and so how has that helped?
And that's our communication, and we've had the partnership with the Retail Council to get this messaging out. I'm part of a Manitoba working group, so this is retailers throughout Manitoba that we meet with, and it's something I stress, reporting is key. It doesn't matter how insignificant or small you think the item that is being stolen is, and is that worth your time to report it? It is. It is 100% worth the time to report it, and we encourage retailers to report it because that, to your point, is how we develop our analytics in regards to what's really happening in our communities. I often will have a retailer say to me, you know, Inspector McKinnon, we're getting hit really hard, and I can go to the analytics and be like, well, compared to other stores in the area or other areas of the city, it doesn't show that you are. Well, we don't report everything. Well, you know what? That impacts us as a police agency. So we encourage reporting is critical to this piece.
You touched on it earlier, just being in the position to respond to this call as a 13-year-old community gun at you as a police officer. Can you tell us a little bit about policing in this age that you had mentioned, you know, where this is more common, you're going out there seeing younger people and they are equipped with weapons or weapons.
Well, I can tell you 30 years ago, if there was one gun call a month, that was a big deal. Unfortunately now, there could be several gun calls in one day or one evening. And the amount of stress that is put onto our officers and what they have to face daily now is extremely more difficult than when I started 30 years ago. So it's very challenging. We rely heavily on our training. We're one of the best trained police services in Canada. I truly believe that. And we fall back on that when we're in a very stressful situation. When you're presented with a lethal encounter, we know how to balance that. And the officers that attended in this particular situation did an extremely incredible job in holding restraint, because I can tell you, as I stated earlier, it could have been a much, much different outcome based on the scenario that was presented to them. Yes, I've personally spoke with their supervisor. They're doing well, and these are seasoned members. So we'll be following up at a later date.
Thank you for your time.